Well, welcome everyone to the Cost of Courage podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Estes, founder and CEO of the Cost of Courage Foundation. And here with us today is Jillian Santillanez.
Yes.
Okay. And we are so happy to have you. We're very excited to have a discussion about family advocacy, domestic violence, and those kinds of related topics. And we're happy to have you here as an expert on a lot of things related to military families.
Thank you so much.
Welcome. And if you wanted to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I have been a victim advocate for 30 years now. I started in San Diego County, which is where I am formerly from, and I started working with a domestic violence agency, one of the largest in San Diego County, called Center for Community Solutions. I was there for about 7 or 8 years. That was a very interesting time in terms of learning and growing and what type of work and support I would be doing for families. I worked with law enforcement at that time. That was really interesting. We would go out on call with the domestic violence response team. And then I worked going to court with victims of domestic violence. So that was a very interesting time for me in terms of entering the field. I learned so much. From there, I worked for the Navy in San Diego for about 6 years or so. I was a victim advocate. And I ended up at that point jumping from being a victim advocate to working for the Family Justice Center as the military liaison. And from there, I went to the Marines, and from in San Diego, and for about, I'm going to say 8 years, almost about 8 years, I worked with the Marines at Miramar. And that was an amazing time for me. Learned so much. And from there, I then went to Monterey. And in Monterey, I've been with the Family Advocacy Program, just retired after 8 years there. I worked and served all branches of service. So I'm very proud to say that I've actually in my career been blessed enough to have worked and served all branches of service, and can't begin to explain my gratitude for you, your families, and the people that are watching today. My uncle was a veteran. He was in Vietnam, and his passing deeply affected me. And in fact, he is the reason why I stepped into this field. I was working with a job coach, and the job coach asked me, what would be your dream job? And that was my homework. And I came back and I said, well, I want to help victims of crime, or I want to help veterans. And with that, we got the newspaper. This is right before the internet. We got the newspaper, and we found this job working with the civilian community, and that's how things started. And I've carried this picture. It's in my bag now because I carry it with me. It's gone with me everywhere that I've worked, of my uncle. And he really informed my work and my service and my dedication. And ironically, interestingly enough, I recently, as I put in for my retirement, I realized I was reading, they had written an article about him in the San Diego Reader, because he passed due to his exposure to Agent Orange.
Oh, okay.
Several years after Vietnam. And I realized reading this article that he actually went to boot camp in Monterey. And
wow, so it's a full circle moment.
Full circle. Full circle. So that is the breadth of my career in the span of 3 minutes. It's been wonderful and amazing. And I never lost the passion or my desire to help and work with people. And I think it's all deeply informed by my uncle and the amazing families that we know and work with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just so wonderful. What a tribute to him and his life and his service, and what you've done over the course of your career is nothing short of incredible.
Thank
you. The impact that you've had, you probably won't even ever realize, the breadth of that. So that's amazing. And So, I mean, it sounds like, you've been on kind of the same playing field for quite a long time, with your most recent work being at Presidio. But for those who may not be aware, could you please describe, because congrats on your recent retirement, so now your former role in the Army Family Advocacy Program and what all of that entailed?
So all branches of service have a family advocacy program. They all work a little differently. I've worked for all of them now, basically.
Sure.
And so essentially this program was put in place. It's a congressionally mandated program that was put into place to support families.
Okay.
And when we have a report of either domestic violence or a form of child abuse, that's when family advocacy gets involved. There are several key players, and again, with every branch, it's a little bit different.
Sure.
And so with family advocacy, if we got a report of domestic violence or child abuse, we would respond in a number of different ways. One of the first ways is to have someone like me, a victim advocate, speak to the victim, offering them a wide range of services and support. My role is to provide. I'm not fully retired in my mind.
In your mind, it's okay.
So we provide resources, safety planning, and support.
Okay.
And that runs the spectrum. I mean, that can look like a lot of different things just depending on what the victim wants.
Right.
And they drive the bus, so to speak. They will dictate and decide, what they want to do. Now, I'm not a licensed clinical therapist, but I can sit down and talk with the person. And
Absolutely,
after 30 years, I have some interesting topics that, I can discuss with a victim in terms of, what is safety like for you? What are boundaries? How can we help to keep you safer?
Right.
If you want to remain in this relationship, my job was never to tell people what to do with their relationships. Okay. It's to ask, what do you want to do? How can we help you be safe?
Make it their choice.
Make it their choice.
Yeah.
Always their choice. And then also, though, planting seeds and information and education about the dangers of domestic violence and child abuse, so that a victim can eventually learn to advocate for themselves in their own lives. And so my role was to, everything from going to court with clients if they needed to go to court for a restraining order or if they were filing for custody. I would go with them to law enforcement interviews. It ran the gambit. And ultimately, again, my role is to provide that support. The other portion of our program is FAP Clinical. FAP Clinical sits down with both parties involved. If it's a domestic violence case that we're talking about separately, they interview both parties. A complete assessment is done with both parties. And in that assessment, we're looking at, what are some of the factors that are, creating or, increasing the violence or aggression in the home. So there's a battery of questions and interviews that are conducted, assessments, if you will, with FAP Clinical. And from there, we also have new parent support. Great. New parent support is another portion of FAP that a lot of people don't know about. And new parent support provides education, information, and support to families that have children under the ages of 5. And our last new parent support nurse was just incredible. She had lactation support groups. She had children's play groups. She had events where we would have people meet the doula. It was just incredible. Now, every location is different based on staffing and needs, but ultimately that is kind of the role and the wrap-up of family advocacy. One of the things that is in common as well with all FAP programs is that we have a monthly incident determination committee. It's called the IDC.
Okay.
And with the IDC, what happens is that they have a select group of people on the highest levels of leadership attending this meeting. Family advocacy is not legal and it is not criminal. A lot of people feel that it does feel like this is a legal proceeding or a criminal proceeding, but it is not. It is administrative. That is one of the biggest mistakes or myths that exist about the FAT program. At this meeting, at this incident determination committee, the people on the committee listen to what the allegations might be if it involves obviously a service member family, right? And they look at using a decision tree, and this is a decision tree algorithm created by the Air Force, studied over 20 years to help make these decisions more fair and equitable, among other things. And I when this first happened years ago, a lot of us fought it, but I really like the IDC model. It does make sense, and I do feel that it is fair to everybody involved. And out of this IDC committee, the members will simply vote yes or no. Did this incident meet criteria for domestic violence? Yeah. If so, who is responsible? Who do we feel was responsible? And from there, we offer treatment. The case is kept open for approximately a year. Both parties, all parties, are entitled to wraparound supportive services, victim advocacy, clinical counseling, maybe anger management. It just sort of runs
Depends
the
on the
gambit.
situation.
Yes, because you could also have law enforcement in a criminal case as well.
That's the thing is, how many other parties are in this, how these cases come about to you. I'd be curious, I'm sure every case is different, but do some of them actually touch maybe another base where you have, victims or service members who either have to be transferred out or they're coming to you from somewhere else? Are there situations where you have to work with other networks of kind of your counterparts at other bases, or with law enforcement in the community and other elements of the community, where it's not just kind of contained in-house to just the FAT program?
So what I would say, every branch, every location has a FAT program. Can people come and go, transfer in, PCS in and out? Yes. And when that happens, we always ensure if the case is still active and open, we transfer the cases. So that way the families are continuing to get the support. We're not leaving anyone behind.
That's good.
Right? That's our motto, right?
That's good. Yeah, for sure.
We ensure that the services continue. In terms of working with law enforcement, it was my honor and pleasure to work with law enforcement. It's over the years, it's been an interesting relationship.
I bet,
depending on the city.
Yeah.
Because back in my days in San Diego, I worked for 3 different locations, and Mid City Police was amazing. They were the best. They were the best. Yes, shout out to them. But working with law enforcement here locally, with the Presidio was also a pleasure for me. We really had to develop and maintain a relationship of sort of honesty and, but also boundaries, because we have different roles and goals,
Absolutely.
So, but in terms of criminal cases and going to the civilian realm and court, it can happen. We've seen many cases where if we're looking at the service member who was the alleged offender, many of those cases will go to military court. They'll be separated. I have had several of those cases that they were transferred to the military, and I mean the civilian branch. So I don't know if your viewers are aware, but the civilian courts does have a court separate for military personnel. This started, I'm going to say, probably 20 years ago. It's a separate sort of division, if you will, or department of the court.
Is it like the Veterans Court?
It's a Veterans Court.
Yeah, perfect. Because I think I've heard of that in terms of the drug addiction recovery type sense, but in terms of the domestic violence,
it can include that.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
A lot of people don't know about that.
Yeah.
So, and that can have its pros and cons, right? But ultimately, I've had several cases since I've been here that have gone to Veterans Court and for diversion. And ultimately, the goal again is to help the service member, get them the access and support that they need.
Yeah.
And then I'm working with the family members.
So you want a successful outcome on all sides.
Yes.
And it's good
absolutely.
that you're there. Yeah, it's so good that there's all of these different components that are helping, again, decrease the recidivism and make sure things don't continue to happen.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it gets me to this question of, I'm not sure statistically if domestic violence is more prevalent in the military than it is in the civilian world, but does the training, the circumstances of multiple deployments of the same assets, same unit, same service members, in a lot of cases, does that ever come into play and complicate things a little bit more, especially if the responding agency is a civilian police force? Do those factors tend to complicate these types of cases having a military element?
I don't think so. And what I will say is that the military is a microcosm. I don't represent the military anymore, so these are my personal opinions. But I do feel that the military is a microcosm of society. And my opinion is that the rates of domestic violence are lower in the military.
Good.
That is my opinion. Again, you have to think of it through the lens point of a microcosm, okay, of society. It's a small portion of society.
Right.
So to anybody looking from the outside, the numbers are going to look astronomical. But I want to say this, though. The military has done, in my opinion, a pretty amazing job since I've been on board for 20 years now, 21 years, in terms of sexual assault and domestic violence with expanding the programs. There are amazing reporting options, and that changes the numbers, and people don't realize that. So, for example, with domestic violence, you could report something that happened to you prior to your military service, as well as sexual assault. And so, of course, that would increase the number. So I think there's these subtle nuances that a lot of the civilian community doesn't fully understand in terms of the military. But I don't think that the rates are higher necessarily if you view it from that lens point, in my opinion. And can it complicate things with working in multiple agencies? Yes, only in the sense that, number one, if the agencies don't cooperate or work together and communicate, that's a problem, which sometimes happens, but not all the time. And if you're reaching out, if you're establishing the rapport and the relationship as an advocate or as an investigator, as a prosecutor, as a law enforcement officer, if you're building and growing your relationship with the advocates on the ground, with the social workers involved, that's going to help tremendously.
Oh, for sure.
The processing of that case with whatever happens. What I will say is for victims, it can be overwhelming. So I sort of, for me, I would take this lens point and forgive me, it's not a joke, but I would sort of say I'm sort of like your tour guide through hell with my little clipboard and
that is a good way
my
to
pen.
put it.
And it's I'm not being facetious, but it really can be hell for people to try to navigate through these systems.
Yeah, especially, there's kids involved. There's a lot of things. There's complicating factors. And, what I like hearing is that the people that are involved, at least from your point of view, is people who have an understanding of all sides. They have an understanding of what the service member is going through and what may have contributed to this, and, also what the victim is going through. Mm-hmm. And I think what's good is, they're sending them to a specific type of court. And I know that in the PTSD, the drug advocacy space, the addiction recovery space, that's where having an understanding of who you're treating is always, the main point. That's what, so it decreases the recidivism, and they're getting the right type of intervention instead of just, whatever the standard run of the mill is, because we have to think about, again, I get back to, the type of training and the lifestyle that the military, how different it is from the civilian. So the treatment plan then has to be appropriate for the person.
I got to tell you this story because you're reminding me of this story. When I worked in San Diego, Miramar, when I was with the Marine Corps, one of the first cases that I had like this with a veteran, I was working with his wife, and she was so distraught when she came in, and she was telling me the story, and she was saying, he's a veteran, and he had flashbacks in the furniture store, and I'm piecing this story together with her, and what do you mean he had? So he just got really overwhelmed in this furniture store. He did not want to be there. And it spiraled into this incident where he ends up getting arrested for domestic violence. And I remember that day when I met with her, it was the first time ever, I started connecting these dots, and I literally hand wrote. In the domestic violence field, we have this thing called the power and control wheel.
Okay.
It was developed in, I think, the 60s in Duluth, Minnesota. We call it the Duluth model. And in that power and control wheel, it talks about domestic violence, and it sort of pieces together not the why, but more of the how domestic violence occurs. So what it looks like.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. And so, but when I worked with her, I was frustrated because it didn't apply to her. So I took it and I made I will never forget this. I wish I still had it too, because it was really beautiful. Yeah. I made a power and control wheel and a safety plan directly related to veterans and PTSD.
Wow.
And it was really powerful and helpful for her. It really helped her to see that, my spouse is being triggered.
Yes.
And we need to learn, what are your triggers?
Right.
Are you on meds? Are you off meds?
For sure.
What is a code word? We came up with this thing. We said, come up with a code word so that if your husband is feeling overwhelmed from this point on, I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're in Costco. I don't care if you're on the beach of 4th of July or if you're in traffic. Code word means we're done. We got to leave.
We're going to go.
We're removing ourselves. Yeah. We're de-escalating.
There you go.
I'm pulling myself out of this trigger, and we're going to reground ourselves. We're going to catch our breath.
Yeah.
We're going to physiologically bring it down to a place where I'm not so psychologically, emotionally, physically overwhelmed.
That's so great, because it's like they're a team, and it's acknowledging those feelings. So it's not like, you're not feeling what you're feeling.
Right.
She's basically that support system for her husband.
Right.
And how did that end up working out for them?
They stayed together, and they worked on things. It was sad. It was sad. He had to go through a lot to pull himself together.
Right.
And what I will say is that there was an amazing amount of love between the two of them. Good. An amazing amount of love that I think kept them together. That was their grounding. But that was one of the first times as well that I realized that sometimes we have to tweak things a little bit to meet the needs of our service member families. Everybody's a little bit different,
Yeah.
Everybody is coming from different, cultural, spiritual backgrounds, some, with no spiritual background. It just runs the gambit. Again, military families are a microcosm of America, of our communities. And what I will say is I've been very happy and pleased to have worked with the people that I've worked with. Not to say there haven't been disagreements. I think behind the scenes, a lot of people don't realize when you kind of get in a good vibe with and working relationship with law enforcement, child welfare services, medical providers, counselors and psychologists, the command. I'm trying to think of all the entities we would encounter. Animal control services, right? In some cases. Yeah. all of these aspects of different community providers, when you have and develop good, powerful relationships with them, we can be a little bit of a dysfunctional family, but we always come back to one another. And the goal is to help the family unit, all the people involved.
Getting the care they need. Making sure that these cases get to you. And again, I'm curious how they would come to you in the first place, because, where incidents, you don't know where they're going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's having that kind of those ties to those agencies so they know, okay, this is the kind of case I have. I know Jillian, so I'm going to give her the heads up and then maybe transfer this case if it's appropriate. Because there's got to be some situations, especially with the bases that you were at, where I don't, with the clearances and the types of things that, people are dealing with, I don't know that they can just talk to anyone.
Right.
So they need to go to somewhere that, is a safe space, if you will, for them to get treatment.
Absolutely.
So did you ever run into situations where the case wasn't transferred to you quickly enough, and what were the challenges there?
I would say no, only in the sense that it's never too late to help someone. What I would say is I had cases where somebody should have probably reported this incident a while ago. Absolutely. But the military, again, has interesting options for people. There's the option to make a restricted report or a non-restricted report, an unrestricted report. So these options, when they make a restricted report, a victim can continue to receive victim advocate services, clinical services, and medical services without anybody knowing. When it goes unrestricted is when we have the IDC process.
Yeah.
So those are the big differences. So I would say, because maybe in my line of work, an important aspect of staying in this field and being motivated is to sort of see the positive side no matter what.
Oh my goodness, I bet. Yeah.
But I would not say, have people at times, again, could they have benefited from services earlier on?
Yeah.
Sure. That does and can happen. But I think that goes into like the shame and the secrecy of domestic violence and child abuse.
Right.
People don't want to report.
No.
And so you had asked, how do I get reports, or how did I get reports? A number of different methods. Any method is optional and open. So if you are a victim, or you know somebody who's a victim of domestic violence or some type of child abuse, you can yourself make a report to a victim advocate.
Right.
If you make that report to a victim advocate on a military installation, you would have most likely the choice for restricted report or unrestricted. You can make that choice. There's a couple caveats to that. So like if law enforcement's already involved, you probably won't be able to utilize an unrestricted report, things like that. But a victim advocate can go over all the aspects of your reporting options. You can sign off on a document to have your case restricted. You can then, again, continue to get services with your victim advocate long term. So, in terms of the services that are available, they're wide ranging with each branch of service. And ultimately, these services have been tweaked over the years, I say, to increase victim rights, is what I've noticed. Our restricted reporting form went from 1.5 pages to about 4 pages.
Wow.
That's incredible. Now, a page of that is instructions, but the other part of that is they added on a component for sexual assault. So they added on to the domestic violence piece, that part of reporting, an option for sexual assault where they had separated the program. So the difference is intimate partner violence. So anything, if I'm in an intimate partner relationship with you and you are being physically or sexually abusive to me, I can work with a FAP victim advocate. But if we don't have a relationship established, then you would go to the SARC part or the sharp portion of the
So
programs. They're different. They're separated.
It off. Okay.
And it's siphoned off, again, it's according to an intimate partner relationship, because with domestic violence, there's a lot more dynamics that go on that are different, that are very unique from a sexual assault case.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, just like anything else, getting a mental health support in general in the military, it's really, something that people may fear the ramifications to their career and things like that. And the spouse, that may be their only source of income, their only livelihood. So, I mean, there's probably on both sides this kind of hesitancy to report until something happens, like you said, the police get involved one way or another. Then there's really nothing that can be done in that case. And, do you ever see that maybe these things happen quite a bit before it eventually becomes a reported incident?
Every location is different. We had, the Air Wing at Miramar. We have, infantry at Camp Pendleton, and in Monterey, it's a different type of individual who's going through language class. So, in I would say the minority of my cases had major incidents of domestic violence that had occurred prior to me coming on.
Like a pattern.
It was more a lower range. I would say more often than not, in terms of my cases, it was emotional abuse or psychological abuse.
That built up into something physical.
In some cases, yes, not all. In the military, a lot of people don't know, but the military does look at psychological and emotional abuse as well. Yes.
Okay, this is good to know. This is really good to know.
And so the two things I would say, number one, I always want to encourage and promote people to call our hotlines. So again, if you or someone you know or love is involved in an unhealthy or abusive, dysfunctional, harmful relationship, you can call the hotline, not only associated with the military branch that you're associated with, because they're all required to have one. You can call anonymously, and you can also call the civilian hotline. So we'll have to post that at the end of this. Oh my goodness,
yes. Well, we're going to put this up throughout. Yeah.
And ultimately, with this, we have to allow people to make their own decisions and determinations. And it can get complicated, it can get very difficult for people. And so that is why the military has increased reporting options. It's offered to as well for domestic violence cases for boyfriends and girlfriends. So the prior regulation was you had to be married. Now it's boyfriend and girlfriend. Intimate partner.
Yeah, whatever that looks like.
And the emotional and psychological component, there are descriptions. A lot of people don't know it, and this to me is fascinating, but I don't think it's maybe fascinating for everybody. But we literally have descriptions written out on what domestic violence looks like emotionally, psychologically, physically. So, and that parlays into the IDC. So whether or not it will meet criteria, it has to hit some of these bars. But for example, a partner who withholds money, and it's a pattern of behavior. We have to remember, it's not just one incident. It's a pattern of behavior. So what we're looking at with like emotional or psychological abuse could be somebody who withholds money from you, who doesn't help you get your driver's license, who might isolate you.
Just makes life difficult.
Name calling, forcing you to report to them or what you're doing, on a daily basis. So those are things that a lot of people maybe might not even consider abusive behavior, but it could fall under that definition. Again, it's a pattern of behavior that we're looking at. To meet the criteria for abuse in the military. So a lot of people do not have any knowledge that the military has really come a long way with reporting options, expanding, in my opinion, victims' rights, and really trying to support and engage the entire family unit.
That's awesome, because that was going to be my next question was, proactive versus reactive, and having people know what to look for, because you often hear from victims, it's not always that, intense physical violence. It could be, small things that build into something bigger down the road. But it's all these things that could be, emotional abuse that could almost be worse, than physical in a lot of cases. So it's good for people to understand what domestic violence looks like, what intimate partner violence looks like. So I appreciate you sharing that. And in terms of these proactive steps you guys are taking, I'm so happy to hear that the military, this has really been on the radar for a long time.
Yeah.
And you and, your counterparts, I think, have really done a lot to bring that to the forefront.
Yes. And what I was going to say as well is that, of course, there's going to be stories of reactivity, things like that. But overall, I really do believe strongly that these programs are put into place as a way to really support families to prevent. So one of the things I did before I left, it was the most fun part of my job, was teaching classes and giving briefs. And I did everything. So I had classes on boundaries. I had classes on safety. I had classes on, so I developed and put together all these PowerPoints on gaslighting because it's topics that are interesting to people right now. For sure. Healthy relationships. We did so many different things to get the engagement. And so what I would also say is that the military also, in my opinion, does offer a wide range of ways for service members to learn and understand patterns of domestic violence and abuse, and also provides, quite frankly, mandatory annual training on the FAT program and domestic violence.
Though.
I think that the bridge that we always challenge is a challenge, and we need to work harder, and we strive to do so, but it's always going to be a little bit of a challenge, is getting to the spouses who might not always have access to that information. And so that's why we really try to be proactive with promoting our hotlines.
That's
with
good.
I'm not a big fan of standing out front of the commissary with cards on the table. People avoid me like the plague.
Well, yeah, and I mean, also, if those situations are happening, that could be part of the abuse as well. Is, you're not going to be free to go get help and, potentially do harm again, going back to someone's possibly their career, a lot to lose.
Right.
So, that's the thing, that you guys have kind of these other ways, if you will, alternative methods.
And I think, just to say this, I think it's a little bit of a myth, and it's an old one that I hope eventually sort of dissolves, that myth of it's going to destroy my career, their career. I'm not in, I can't speak for other people. So that can be, tricky. So I haven't been, in a service member's shoes. But what I can say, though, is that, again, from a lens point of I'm in this terrible situation and they're ruining my life, I can understand that thought process. But ultimately, if you focus out on the macro, really, again, in my career, in my 21 years with the military, I've never seen a case where somebody had one incident and was discharged.
That's really good to know.
If that happened, if it did happen, it was because it was probably felony level situation where there was imminent harm or danger. That's So the military does work with people in terms of, okay, you have a problem. There's a problem in your family. We've gotten these reports. And then that's where you plug in the victim advocate, the clinician, all these service providers, the support team to help get this family hopefully back on track, right?
That's awesome.
And so what I would say, again, like, everybody's entitled to their opinions, because I know that there are some families that, didn't want involvement, didn't want the help, but I feel like also a lot of times families like that are shrouded in that secrecy and that fear, and so we're trying to work to break cycles here. And so what I would say ultimately is that, I do think that the programs in place, There's no perfect program, and we know that there's a lot of changes on the horizon right now. But we do know that there's many, many services and opportunities for families to get help, even if it's anonymous. Reach out, call.
That is a huge message I want, to send to the audience for sure. And I had one last question.
Okay.
Because I know you have done a lot of work with, the BOSS program, the Single Soldiers program.
Yes.
So sometimes, and this is, I'm not a therapist, but just in, travels, sometimes some of the, PTSD and maybe mental health concerns they predate service.
Absolutely.
So depending on how people grew up, what their socioeconomic background was, whatever circumstances happened to them that led to the enlistment sometimes, are there things you can do before people end up in an intimate partner relationship of any kind to kind of instill a lot of these proactive efforts to make sure that maybe we prevent some future domestic violence and any type of harm to a partner? Is there anything that you're doing to kind of get ahead of that?
So, yes. And what I first want to tell you, because I'm thinking about this, triggering a memory in my mind, I want to share with you one of the cases that I worked on, which to me was just an amazing turn of events. And it's what you're talking about. I had a victim. I was out doing something. I was out in the field, and I came into the office, and my manager said, there's somebody here and she needs to talk to you. And we sat down and we talked. And this case involved her being molested as a child. And she's 18 years old in the military, and she's struggling now, and she's really suffering the effects of PTSD, basically.
Sure.
And so we started our work together, and she came to me and said, I want a restraining order against him. Over 20 years later, his family's harassing me, and
Oh my goodness.
And so what we did, this was so amazing, and I'm so proud of this case. We just started making calls, and I just said, you want to sit with me today and we can start making calls? Let's do this. Yes, we worked together, and her case was reopened over 20 years later, and he was not only charged, but he was found guilty of child molestation for her case and two others. And he got 20 years. And that was something that just sort of fell in my lap. It was an amazing case. She went on, she discharged, and she wanted to become a victim advocate.
No,
yes.
So see, it's like a full circle.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she was supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's amazing, see?
Yeah. So I kind of pointed her in the direction of how to do this once her case was completed.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing, turn of events. It's one of I have a couple cases I'm really proud and happy to talk about, and that's one of them. And that didn't involve domestic violence, and involve child abuse, but tags on to what you're saying. Service members that do come into service, we know a lot of service members do come into service to avoid, a childhood situation, or like they're coming in at 18 and they haven't fully addressed their trauma, or their childhood abuse or things that happen to them. And can it transfer over, sort of bleed into, if you will, their service and affect the choices they make? Absolutely. So what I say is, whether you go to a clinic, which I know you don't want to go to, but you really should, considering a civilian therapist, maybe joining a support group. If you or somebody I want to name drop some agencies that I really love. NAMI, the National Association for Mental Illness. Brilliant, chef's kiss. These people are amazing. If someone is affected, or you're affected by mental illness, this program, they have a family support program. It kind of, to me, it looks similar to like Alcoholics Anonymous and the Al-Anon programs for the families. That's kind of what NAMI does. And so I really recommend people to if you know you've had some issues and problems in your life, if you're suffering these effects, I really encourage, first and foremost, some level, some type of psychoeducation through counseling. Check out the YouTube. Check out on the internet. You know,
there's a lot out there.
A lot of people. I really like Dr. Ramani, Ramani. I think I'm spelling. Yeah, Dr. Ramani is really amazing. I've got one who's non-clinical. Her name is Anna Runkle, the Crappy Childhood Fairy. That's her name on YouTube.
Really?
Crappy Childhood Therapy.
Wow.
Yeah, therapist. And she's amazing and wonderful, because I know some people, and I know especially some service members, are going to be averse to clinicians. Anna Runkle's a good option to that.
That's good.
I really like Peter Salerno, Dr. Peter Salerno. He teaches a lot on narcissism and toxic relationships. Okay. So again, those are some of my favorites, and those are some of the people that I'm reading Dr. Salerno's book right now on narcissism. And so I really encourage people, if you know you need help, get the help. Alcohol and drugs are not going to help you. That's self-medicating, and it could lead down roads that really spiral your life out of control. Call a hotline anonymously if need be. Reach out to a victim advocate. We are here. We have privacy on par with an attorney or a chaplain. We have that level of privacy. So the only thing a victim advocate is required to legally report out is alleged child abuse. So if they suspect child abuse is going on, we're mandated reporters. And elder abuse or potential homicide. So if you come to me and I think you're probably going to be murdered, then I might reach out to law enforcement or my boss, if nobody else, to say, hey, we need to do an assessment. I had a case where the soldier's husband was pulling a loaded gun on her regularly when they would have these conflicts. Sure. And so that was a very high-risk case. Absolutely. She was able to keep her case restricted. She came back a year later and went unrestricted. So, and finally ended that relationship, which I think was best for her and her baby, because she ended up having a baby. Gosh. So, I mean, and this is the thing. I love my job. Not very many people have had the occasion to say that. I love my job. Yeah. These families and these people are so dynamic and complex and beautiful. And this is, in summation, life. Life, it contains so many things. It contains beauty, but it also contains horror and violence. We've experienced that, and bringing it back to my uncle, what was born out of what he experienced, the violence and his death, I was able to plant seeds for probably thousands of people. Absolutely. And maybe to help a couple along the way. So I'm really proud of that. And I just encourage, if you need to help, please call a hotline. If nothing else, they can provide you with support and information. And that's the first step to any change.
Well, I think you've helped more than a couple of people. And I think that the impact you've had on lives, I am serious when I say thank you for everything that you've done. I've been able to see, some of what you've been able to do and the end result of that. And it's amazing what you're able to do and the mental strength that you have had to continue to do that work. Thank you. So I wish you the very best, well-deserved retirement that you can have, and I hope you enjoy everything about the next several years to come.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with these families. It's bittersweet. Yep. It's hard to look through the lens of civilians. I feel sort of like on some levels that I'm military myself now, right? I'm kind of in the family. Yes, of course. And so now I'm like, I'm a civilian. I don't know how to do this, but it's a next step in my journey. And I'm so proud and so honored to have done this work. And my love to all of you military families and veterans. Adore you guys, and just wish you so much peace and beauty in your lives.
Well, thank you so much, and our thanks as well, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in today, and thank you, Jillian. You're incredible.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks. We wanted to let everyone know that our 12-year anniversary Tribute to Service Gala is coming up on Saturday, November 7th, 2026. It'll be at 5 p.m. at the Hyatt Regency in Santa Clara. Our special guest and MC is Jessica Aguirre, NBC Bay Area news anchor. It'll be a semi-formal event. All of the details are on our website, and the proceeds from our annual fundraiser, this Tribute to Service Gala, is going to support veterans and military families who are struggling with food insecurity. And as always, we are an all-volunteer organization, so 98% of all donations go directly to those in need. For information, please visit thecostofcouragefoundation.org and go to our Tribute to Service Gala page. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching the Cost of Courage podcast. For more on the foundation, please visit our website, thecostofcouragefoundation.org. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.